with the recording um, be a little bit more clean for those who need to watch it after the fact. So I'm doing the devotion today, and I wanted to share with you a couple of things. So I'm a daughter of the Synod. I think a lot of you know that. And I attended and grew up at First Lutheran Church in Detroit Lakes. And if you know me very well, you would know that I take things pretty seriously. Like I can be a lot of fun, but each year at Christmas program time, I always had a part. And I don't think it was because I was the best person to play that part, but I memorized my lines like when you're supposed to. Like I'm a rule follower. And so I was a teacher one year. I had like every year I was someone. Um, and again, like obviously I'm not a Broadway star, so it wasn't because of my amazing acting. But like I memorized my lines, I knew where I was supposed to be, all of those things. And so with in my previous job, this would be the time of year I would be getting ready for Christmas program. That long Saturday rehearsal and the hecticness of the Christmas program day. And I wanted to share with you one of my favorite parts of the Christmas program from when I worked in a congregation. So this is from last year's Christmas program at Glendon Lutheran. Just going to show you like the tiniest, I have too many tabs open, the tiniest little video. And this is one of the things that brought me the most joy. So hopefully the sound will work all right. And here we go. Right? And so there's just so much joy. Like as the churches that I've been part of or have seen, there's always like that song that the congregation that the kids just like get into. And through the 13 years, apparently I made it go tell it on the mountain. Like we couldn't have a Christmas program without singing that. And the congregation had to join in for the verses because it gets a little tricky in verse 2 and 3, but they just went and told it on the mountain, the joys. And it made me think of some other Christmas programs. There was a young gentleman who was a little after my own heart, like one of those rule followers, newest stuff. And we did a program coming from the innkeeper's point of view. I remembered that when I read this devotion every morning, Live in Grace, Walk in Love by Bob Goff. So another thing, if you know me very well, I'm kind of cynical. And so I read Bob Goff because he helps me like be less cynical and like just find joy and love. And so this was the devotion for December 1st. And I wanted to read that to you. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. Right before Jesus was to be born, his soon to be parents had to make the trek from Nazareth to Judea to register for the national census. The trip had to be taken them a while, especially since Mary was 9 months pregnant. When they arrived in Bethlehem, eager to find a place to stay the night, the innkeeper said there was no room for them. So Mary and Joseph spent the night in a stable, on haystacks next to donkeys and sheep, and that's where the Savior was born. I often wonder how long it was before the innkeeper knew what he had missed. When he heard about the Messiah from Nazareth, who brought dead people back to life and healed lepers of their disease, I can't help but think he regretted his choice to turn them away. He had to have relived the night in his mind, coming up with ways he could have made room for the savior of the world. As busy people in the 21st century, we can point to a lot of reasons to explain why we don't make more room for Jesus and the people he loves in our lives. We got bills to pay and kids to raise and responsibilities pulling us in every direction. But here's only one thing that God has asked us to do: to love him. And in doing so, love the people around us. Let's avoid the innkeeper's mistake. Let's do some renovations to make room for the Messiah while we still have time. I have the sinking suspicion that I'm not the only person who worked at a church that didn't do a good job about doing daily devotions and digging into God's word for my own personal faith. Writing the Sunday school lessons and confirmation lessons and prayers and all of that. That was all well and good, but to take time to do stuff for my own reflection was something that I had to work really hard at. Now, this book wasn't written with a pandemic in mind, and so this year is very different. Bob Goff didn't know what we would be having to deal with this time of year. But the question he asks is, what do you need to move out of your life to make room for Jesus? So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and I'm going, the two questions I want you to answer are: one of your favorite Christmas program stories. It can be like with you working in a congregation, or it can be from your childhood, whatever like brings you that joy, that warm heart. And then the second question is, how is this year different for making room for Jesus in Christmas, like in your own personal? So you can go as deep or as far as you want in that. I'm gonna put you in breakout rooms, and we'll only be in there for like 6 minutes, and then I have a prayer. So I'm creating those, I'm opening them. So yeah, so I will broadcast to you all those two questions, but the rooms should be open to resume. There we go. So here it is. So let us pray. Let it go. God with us, we have a long list of things we want to see on Christmas Eve. Experiences we want to have, feelings we want to feel, friends and family we want to hug, songs we want to sing, and even cookies we want to eat. We all hold that before you today. Some of the things might be realized, many will not. But still, Christmas will come. You still show up in our world and fill us with awe and wonder. You will once again renew our hearts and minds to fully hope, to express unconditional love, to share contagious joy, and find peace, peace that passes all understanding. We release to you the ghosts of Christmas past and ask for the Spirit to fill us with energy and imagination for the Christmas that is to come. In your holy name. Amen. All right. I will get right down to some business. Pastor Carla is going to share about the exciting joys of constitutions. Hold on to your seat.
Yeah, just hold on to your seats. So Randy McGuire and Pastor Michael Buller serve on the Constitution Committee for our Synod. And of course, we are always looking for some additional members, but the three of us get the joy of walking beside, usually it's a lay leader or a pastor, as they refine and revise their constitutions. We're bringing this up at this time of year because many of you have annual meetings that will happen in January, and we just want to make sure that you have your constitutions in place, especially for how to hold a meeting, probably with electronic means. And we do have some information on our Synod website about, if you do not have that as part of your current constitution, how you can incorporate that into your constitution. If it's not already part of your constitution, you can simply make a continuing resolution, which is passed by the Synod Council. That can be in place, and that will help you through this time of pandemic. And there are some resources on the website for how congregations have held congregational meetings, whether it's by Zoom or whether it's parking lot worship or meeting or some combination thereof. And we on the Synod staff can help you as well, give you some ideas if that's something. Our Synod lawyer has reminded us that because we are nonprofit church organizations of the state of Minnesota, we are required to have an annual meeting. I don't think, as he said, that anybody will throw you out onto the streets if you don't do it just right this year, because I think there's a lot of grace. But I would encourage you to have an annual meeting this year so that you can continue to, doesn't mean that we don't have the work of Christ to continue to do even during this time of pandemic. If you are a congregation that is in need of refreshing your constitution, I invite you to look at the resources that are on our Synod website. And Chris, are you able to let me share my screen?
Since you're a co-host, you should be able to.
Okay.
You have it at the bottom, a green arrow that says share screen.
Yeah. One participant can share at a time.
Yep. So you should be okay.
So, can you see this? Because I can't tell if you're seeing my.
So, are you wanting to share the model constitution?
Yep. You want to do that? So the model constitution is found on our under resources for congregations. In the search little eyeglass piece, you can put model constitution. It'll take you right to it. Every 3 years, we have an updated constitution that comes to us from Churchwide. Randy and I would advise that, and Michael, I'm not sure if Michael's on our call today, but the three of us would advise that if it's been a while since you've updated your constitution, that you simply take that first bullet item, Model Constitution for Congregations of the ELCA 2019, start with that and then add in your particular provisions that are unique to your congregation, whether it's specific things that relate to bylaws or some extra duties for what a council does or what a congregation does. And then we ask that you send our committee a copy of the Constitution. We'll just take a look at it to make sure there isn't anything in conflict with the model Constitution. And the constitutions, if you're simply bringing it up to speed, just require one vote by your congregation to adopt that revised constitution. If you are revising some things that are particular to your congregation, you will need 2 votes. You'll need a first vote and then a second vote at another date and time that would be a ratification of those particular changes that are germane for your congregation. There is a little guide there for how to use the model constitution. And of course, our committee members are always available to talk with you about the steps that it takes. We do ask that you use the formatting from the model constitution because we use Microsoft Word and we do use the comparison software so that it speeds up reviewing your constitution and so that we can make easy comparisons. Otherwise, it just takes a lot of time to have to go through and read word for word through those. Are there any questions at this point about constitutions and annual meetings coming up?
Carla, I have a question.
Yeah.
It's Pastor Eliza from Barrett. So we've been working with Pastor Michael, so thank you for his work. So we do have a couple of location specific changes, so not just getting up to the 2019 model constitution. So how would we present this year's vote? Like if the second meeting is a ratification, what is it called this year, what we're doing?
You're adopting.
We're adopting. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
a motion to
you're-
adopt this constitution,
Yeah,
and then
you're
the next.
providing a resolution to adopt the constitution, and then say next year or at another congregational meeting, you would ratify that.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
I have,
Oh, go ahead.
I think you mentioned this, but just to be clear, if we notify the congregation of a possible amendment or notice to the Constitution, specifically, would a Zoom electronic meeting count as an annual meeting? That only has to be ratified once, voted on once at an annual meeting, or is that, I thought it was always twice. If we
If
give
you
them
are-
30 days.
If you are simply bringing your constitution up to meet the model constitution, it only requires one vote with a 50% majority. If you are changing items in your constitution that are specific just to your church, like it says we need to have 4 members for the stewardship committee, they serve on alternating years, or whatever, that would require 2 votes. And so there's in that guide, it explains that piece of it. But if you're just bringing it up to be in line with the model constitution, one congregational vote, majority vote, will bring that in. If all you want to do is bring in a continuing resolution to allow for electronic meetings, just the council has to pass that as a continuing resolution. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Again, you see anything, Chris?
Nope. I am going to show you where some of those annual meeting resources are. I put a banner on our main page of our website today, and everything on this resource page was put in mailing that went out last week, mailed to the congregations. And so all of this information was in that mailing, and it's here on the website. One other thing is the annual, if you use the ELCA's annual report cover, it is here online. There's a version that's like a booklet as well, but make sure that your people who need to know this have it. So WordPress was being fussy with me today, and I wasn't able to put this link on our website, but it's in yesterday's email to you all, and it will be in tomorrow's Northern Lights, the direct link for this. But make sure that whoever is your great person at your congregation that compiles the annual report has access to this. We've been getting some emails and phone calls about that we're happy to answer, but we just want to make sure that the people who need to know the information is there. And so all of this information was sent paper, and it's here on our website as well. So the sample resolution from a lawyer, the guidance, and it has the specific parts in where in your constitutions you would need to look to make sure that electronic meetings are okay. So that's a little bit more about the joys of annual meetings for this particular season of our lives as the church together. Any other questions about annual meetings or constitution, the joys of those? You guys are just all ready to go, right? Couple other things we want to share with you. We will be doing a complete synod worship service for Sunday, December 27th. So there will be a complete video with songs and all the things Bishop Bill preaching. He's using the lectionary. It's the Luke 2 with Simeon and Anna. So there's a complete service. And there's audio as well. So if you are a congregation that needs radio, you have that. There will be a segment that's just the gospel and Bishop Bill's sermon. So if you want to do all of your other stuff, you are free to do that. And there's also a sermon manuscript for those who mail out the sermons. So those will all be available, I'm hoping, by the end of my day on December 21st. It's a Monday. I wanted to get it done a little bit earlier since that's Christmas week. But the end of my day might be different than the end of your day. So that happens sometimes. So I will get it up on the website and emailed to you all by the end of my day on Monday, the 21st, so that you can tend to all of that and hopefully take a little bit of Sabbath rest time after whatever your Christmas services look like this year. Another resource that I just learned about is, let me make sure I have that one up. There is a fun service that Bishop Bill will be part of. All of the bishops that were elected last year, so 2019, that bishop class, will be leading an Epiphany service on Epiphany itself on January 6th at 7 o'clock, and it will be on our site, our Facebook site, and other websites. I don't have all the information on this, but I'm getting it. I've started the process of getting the information from people. So that, mark your calendars for that. It will be streamed on our Facebook page. So January 6th at 7 o'clock. So if you do a midday service, midweek service rather, you can use that for Epiphany.
I would also like to add, I don't know how many of you are using our Stir Us to Dream series for Advent, but if you are using it, we would love to have feedback. Just drop us an email or drop Chris an email just to let us know if that has been helpful and useful. We're always trying to provide resources and also improve the resources that we do provide. So we would appreciate feedback. And I do believe, Chris, you've got a few extra resources on the Synod website, because I know I just taped a children's message for Christmas. So
yeah, we will be doing a little bonus devotions that you guys can share. Each weekend, I take verses from the RCL and make images and put a little devotion, and I put that on our Facebook page and our Instagram. And you guys can share that with your congregations if you wish. And I'll be doing that the 12 days of Christmas. I really love the 12 days of Christmas, and there will be a different hymn each day. So the image will be a line from a Christmas hymn and a little snippet about that. So each morning on the 12 days of Christmas, those will be on our Facebook page. Pastor Carla shared that she recorded a children's story. I'll post that on Christmas Eve in the morning for you to share as well. And with those Lord Stir Us to Dream, make sure that your stewardship committees look at that. There's some great resources from Pastor Keith Pearson, who we share with the Southwestern Minnesota Synod. Some great resources for your foundation. If you have people that want to work on estate planning, that sort of gift planning things. And then there's some other great resources that can be used anytime, not just during Advent. So if your congregation has a history of doing a fall or a spring stewardship drive, or just general information, there's some really great helpful information. Larry Stringy, who was Martin Luther, I mean, he wasn't Martin Luther. It was Martin Luther. But Larry Stringy, who was part of that, did a 2-part series on stewardship and generosity, and they're on that website as well. And that's just general great stewardship generosity resources. And those will keep up for all time, or at least for a long, long time. You can find them on our YouTube channel as well. I've been putting some resources, some Christmas resources in the Northern Lights. And by this time, I'm sure that most of you have some of your stuff plotted out and figured out. And so, but just thinking of Epiphany, we have that great resource. And then the Sunday evenings of Epiphany, we are part of a book study on a book called Native. And I put that in, and I encourage you to look at that as well. And it's for congregations. You have, the registration might be a little confusing, but there's a different couple ways to register. And so we have a special facilitator, Colleen, who's led this book study in other synods. And so there's a registration, and there's $10, and that is not for the book. It's just a registration. And that money will solely go to our Native American ministries in our synod, The Way and People's Church in Bemidji. So that's what that $10 is for. If that's cost prohibitive for you or for your people, you can bypass that. You don't need to pay the $10 to participate. There's also a couple of boxes you can check if the cost of the book is prohibitive for someone, you can click that and we can send it. And then we just want to support our Indigenous neighbors. And so if you have people in your congregation or know of people in your community that would appreciate it, we want to just send the book to them as a thank you for being interested in walking together with us. So there's that little thing to select. So we, as a synod, purchase a group of books from a Native American bookstore down in the cities to support that small business as well. And so we can send those books to people who need them. And so we would be happy to do that. So yeah, so it's a little confusing, but we try to make a lot of options for people who need it.
And Chris,
yeah.
there's a question on chat.
Yeah.
Are the book studies going to be led through Zoom?
Yes, it will be. They have their own Zoom person, so it won't be me. I get to just participate, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. I've had the book on my bookshelf now for a while, so this will force me to read it. But yes, it will be on Zoom, and since I'm not leading it, I don't have the link yet, but I will get the link to everyone who's registered.
So a couple other things that we have. Many of you have been to Fair Hills probably many times, and we did get notice that David Caldall, owner of Fair Hills Resort, passed away. And so his there was a private service on, I believe it was December 3rd, and our synod staff has sent a card and a memorial, especially since we've had many years of connection with the folks there. And so if you're willing or wanting to send a card, you can send it directly to Fair Hills and just express your appreciation and your connections to that place. Things to keep on your radar for prayers this week. We have candidacy interviews on the 10th, and just hold our candidates and the candidacy committee in your prayers as we help walk with those students through that process. And another resource, Mary Beth McGovern, Pastor Mary Beth, has, I believe she made this offer a couple times back, but wanted to lift this up, as I know that COVID is touching many of your congregations and communities now. It's reaching into the rural areas, and She has had a lot of experience with working with families through electronic means and working with COVID and that type of thing. And so if you're wanting to talk with someone in our synod, she's a wonderful resource for how do you, how do you do a funeral online? How do you work with a family remotely and still be offering that personal touch and compassion and care for those who are grieving? Chris, what else have we got? Oops, you're muted.
One thing I forgot to say with annual meetings, and I've said this before, is our synod assembly will be Saturday, May 22nd, a one day, and it will be virtual. I was on a call today with Churchwide talking about synod assemblies and legalities and all that fun stuff. So the people who are your voting members from your congregations need to have access to a device, preferably a tablet or a computer, because then if they have technical difficulties, they can use their phone to call. So to not rely solely on their phone, and capacity for access to internet data. The Synod Assembly Planning Team will be doing some orientations to help people walk through. Concordia College will be hosting the people who will be presenting, and we're using their voting platform, which is tried and true to Concordia. And they say that it's easy to use. I'm still digging into that a little bit more. And our hope is that if numbers and COVID, the joys of COVID and planning, we are hoping to have some satellite locations that if it's safe to be in small groups, we will meet that way, and we will work with those satellite locations on the technology needs. But your voting members need to have some basic technology stuff, so they are a little bit not behind the 8 ball in that. A couple other things since we started in COVID conversations, a couple of other things I wanted to share with you. I have so many windows open. Let me find the right one. Each day, this site gets updated and I peek at it for our synod, the Minnesota Department of Health situation update. And it has it by county. I almost said by synod, by county. So you can see the numbers are how your county is doing. They update it every day at about 11 in the morning. So you can see there has been some updates to the guidance in the last month. So we have here on our COVID resource page, I updated, these were updated on 11/20. If you were on this call at the end of November, I shared them with you. This is the big one. And I went through and I highlighted the things that were the main changes. So for worship services for this executive order, there aren't a lot of changes to the actual worship service. Most of the changes that were made in this recent executive order were for, like it says right here, it does not impact weddings, funerals, or planned religious services, but it does prohibit receptions, celebrations, and gatherings. So your rules of having a funeral luncheon like that would not be able to happen under this guidance. So the actual worship service, the guidance is, the Minnesota guidance is the same. As a synod, Bishop Bill's guidance is to be safe, and to Pastor Carla can speak more to this too. She has a brother that knows, that didn't drop out of medical school like I did. I didn't go to medical school, but that it's just safe right now to, your communities, the numbers are skyrocketing in different places. And so the recommendation is to make sure that you have services available for people who it's not safe for them to come. And I'll pass the baton to Pastor Carla to talk more at length about that.
So I just would have to echo what we hear from the CDC and the Minnesota Department of Public Health. I think you all know that COVID is hitting particularly now into the rural areas. It's not just a big city disease that's striking. We've had, I have to tell you one little story from my brother who serves a very small hospital in Tyler, Minnesota, which is in southwestern Minnesota. Last Tuesday, I think it was, he spent 6 hours on the phone trying to find a bed for a patient who'd come into their hospital with a post-surgical issue. And he said it was the only thing he could do for 6 hours. And he tried Minneapolis, Rochester, and Sioux Falls. And so COVID is filling up the hospitals, and there's other stuff that continues to happen. People still have heart attacks and strokes and car accidents and that kind of thing. And we're really putting a stress on the healthcare industry with this disease. And so whatever you can do to encourage your people to continue safe health practices is greatly appreciated. And this has been going on for many months, and we've heard the stress from pastors like yourself. We've heard stress from healthcare workers and first responders. And we just want to try and find ways that we can love our neighbor in the most safe and best way possible. So please, as you are preparing your Christmas celebrations, please keep those things in mind. We have not yet seen the surge from Thanksgiving, and we certainly don't want to be a point of surge for Christmas. And I know this makes it very hard for people, but just encourage you to keep up to date with where our state is at and where your communities are at as well. I know I've talked to 3 or 4 pastors within the last 7 days who all had COVID deaths within their congregation or community. So are there questions at all at this point about worship or Christmas or COVID that we should be talking about?
Bishop Bill spoke at the last time we met that his sense is that the state of Minnesota isn't going to change to dial back the worship recommendations because of the push of a couple of our Christian neighbors, how they worship. And so the likelihood of the Minnesota Department of Health guidance of worship services probably won't be changed. But like my dad always says, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And that's why it's important on our COVID website resource page, there's a link to your county healthcare providers. And they, if you don't know them, they would be a great resource for you to make sure that you know what's going on in your community. Because I look at a couple of counties, and I always look over at St. Louis County, which is the Duluth area, and they just skyrocket, and they have over 10,000 cases right now. And so, and just, and a couple counties over has, 2. And so each place is so different. So your community is the best.
If there's a question, just raise your hand or speak up, unmute yourself.
There was a question that said, were you a teenager when your dad said that? Actually, it was in my adult life that my dad said that to me. I have a lot of things that I can do with my life, but that he doesn't want me. He wants me to follow my call.
I think there was one more thing, Chris, on our, you want to let people know about Bishop Bill's accounts being hacked?
Ah, yes. Yes. How could I forget about that? I would like to forget about that. So, it's less Bishop Bill's Gmail account with people getting into it. So, some precautions that I've taken, and this is happening across the ELCA in my little listservs of other communicators across our fine denomination. This is hitting up most places. So I have taken down the directory that had all of your email addresses in it. So if you need a rostered leader directory on the website, it says to email me. I also learned that our website does not allow analytics, so I had no idea how many of you all were going there to look at them. One problem is that once it's out there. So the people who downloaded it have it. And so, but it's less spam and it's more phishing. And so if you get an email from Bishop Bill, and they're even now putting his picture on there and all of that stuff. If you get an email from Bishop Bill, that's a Gmail account, because that's what they seem to be using the most for us and in other synods. Bishop Bill has one Gmail address, and it is, I think, let me find it. It is Bishop B. Tesh at Gmail. That is his only Gmail account. And I went into Gmail and took a bunch of names that could be, like, people could make up in his. So I snagged as many as Google would let me. I'm going to try to get a hold of them and try to snag some more. So hopefully that will be a hindrance. I haven't taken down the pulpit supply list. So if you're on the pulpit supply list, I'm sorry, I haven't quite figured out how to have that, because people need the contact information for that. So Bishop Bill won't ask you for a gift card. Some of them have been about, reach out to me, I'm in a meeting, it's important. He's never done that to me. Pastor Carla, has he ever done that to you? Emailed, like, saying you need to do this for me really quick because I'm busy?
Never.
Yeah.
I've
I've
gotten lots of emails supposedly from him that say that.
Yeah. And so just look at that email address of where it's coming from, mark it as spam in your email, and then delete it. So it's not, they're trying to get you to do things, and the likelihood of them having access to your contacts is low. They're just trying to get things from you.
And please don't forward them.
Yeah. I mean, it like doesn't, just mark it as spam. What the Concordia, since they're using Gmail, like our Concordia IT department can't help us that much. But they told us that just to mark it as spam and delete it. So yeah, if you have your email address on your website, that's not like to email me, click here. If it like says your email address, maybe figure out a way to take that down from your website, because it's happening in congregations too. And maybe just put out a proactive notice, like there's been some phishing attacks across our church, our wider church, and in our synod. And so if you get an email that seems suspicious, just look at the address of where it's coming from, something like that. There's been a couple churches in Moorhead, I know that it's happened, and a couple people fell for it. And so to like backtrack and all of that stuff. Make sure that it's always going to be proactive, so then they have heard it before and not freak out. But yeah, so we're trying to take some steps to try to make it less of a hassle for you all. But I just think people need better hobbies. I'm not saying it's not a hobby. I'm just saying they can learn to crochet or do something different. So yeah, so that's my latest research on the emails. And yeah, just let your people know too, if they see something, because we don't want people to fall for it and get monetarily twisted up in it.
I think that's it, unless people have a question. Any questions from anybody? Chris, when is our next time that we will meet?
We will meet we will meet here, I believe, on the 22nd. We haven't talked about that one yet as a staff. We won't be meeting with council presidents this month because that would be the 27th, and the Synod office is closed for the week between Christmas and New Year's. There will be a staff person on call that if you have something come up that week between Christmas and New Year's, you can always reach out to someone. But the office will be closed that week. So Pastor Carlos, should we meet on the 22nd? If not, the next time we would meet is January 12th.
Yeah, we'll talk about it as a staff and we'll get word out to folks.
Read your Northern Lights and the information will be in there.
Nope. I appreciate all your work, everyone, and especially during this, as you prepare your congregations for the Christmas season. And it's, I know it's tough for many people, especially those who are feeling isolated and stranded and alone and maybe grieving. And so just know that we continue to hold you all in prayer and your congregations and members and communities in prayer. And know that there is light. My favorite season is Epiphany. I love going through the Christmas season into Epiphany and looking at light and new life and opportunity and broader horizons and all of those good things that Christ brings into our life day by day. So thank you all. Thank you for your time.